The air inside the packed arena in Toronto was thick with electricity, a swirling nebula of purple light sticks, deafening cheers, and the collective heartbeat of thousands of fans who had traveled from every corner of the globe. For months, the narrative surrounding BTS had been one of triumphant returns, individual milestones, and the bittersweet, agonizing wait as each member navigated their mandatory military service and stepped back out into the blinding light of global stardom. Yet, nothing could have prepared the audience, or Kim Seokjin himself, for what was about to unfold under the stadium lights, turning a standard world tour stop into an unforgettable emotional crucible that would forever alter how the world viewed the bond holding South Korea's biggest musical phenomenon together, JIN. Hailed universally as worldwide handsome and revered by millions for his sharp wit, effortless charisma, and soaring vocals, stood center stage catching his breath between heavy sets. To the casual observer, he was the picture of unshakable confidence, the eldest Hyung who had carried the unofficial mantle of the group's emotional anchor through years of dizzying highs and crushing lows. But beneath the polished veneer of his stage outfit and the dazzling pyrotechnics, Seokjin was carrying a quiet, heavy fatigue, not just physical exhaustion from relentless touring, but the profound psychological weight of stepping back onto the international stage alone, without the safety net of his 6 brothers standing right beside him. Throughout the grueling preparation for this solo run, the absence of RM, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook loomed large over every rehearsal room and hotel suite. In countless behind-the-scenes glimpses and candid audio logs, JIN had frequently lamented how strange it felt to look to his left or right and find empty space instead of RM's reassuring nod, Suga's dry humor, J-Hope's radiant energy, Jimin's sweet encouragement, V's unpredictable playfulness, or Jungkook's fierce, competitive drive. They were a septet forged in the fires of near obscurity, rising together from a tiny basement agency to conquer stadiums that once seemed impossible to dream of. Every note JIN sang on this tour carried echoes of their shared history, a testament to a brotherhood so tight-knit that separation felt like missing a limb. As the opening chords of his emotional ballad echoed through the Toronto venue, the arena dimmed into a quiet, reverent sea of shimmering constellations. JIN walked slowly toward the edge of the extended runway, his eyes scanning the front rows where international armies held up heartfelt banners written in both English and Korean. He began to sing, his voice rich with an unvarnished vulnerability that instantly quieted the tens of thousands in attendance. It was a moment of pure communion between an artist and his devoted following, a shared language built on years of mutual survival and unconditional support. But as the song reached its swelling chorus, a sudden commotion in the VIP restricted section near the sound booth caught the corner of his EYE.AT first. It registered merely as a ripple in the tightly managed security perimeter, a brief flurry of movement that security guards quickly stepped in to navigate. But then, a familiar silhouette emerged from the shadows of the backstage riser, stepping past the heavy velvet curtains into the ambient glow of the stage lights. Time seemed to lurch forward and then violently stall. JIN froze mid-lyric, his mouth remaining slightly open as his gaze locked onto the figure walking forward with tentative, graceful steps. It was not a staff member, nor a local dignitary, but his mother, a woman who had spent a lifetime shielding her family from the invasive glare of the public eye, standing now in the middle of a Canadian arena thousands of miles away from Seoul. The realization hit Seokjin with the force of a physical blow. For a man who prided himself on maintaining composure, whose default defense mechanism against overwhelming emotion was always a well-timed joke or a bright, theatrical laugh, the mask completely dissolved in a single, heart-shattering second. The microphone trembled in his hand as his breath hitched, his eyes widening in total disbelief. He blinked rapidly, desperately trying to process whether the exhaustion of international travel was finally playing cruel tricks on his mind. But she was truly there, smiling softly through her own shimmering tears, holding a single white rose that she had clutched tightly during her covert journey across continents. The arena, sensing the sudden shift in JIN's demeanor, quieted down instantly. The sea of purple light sticks slowed their rhythmic swaying, holding their collective breath as tens of thousands of pairs of eyes shifted from the stage to the VIP riser. In that suspended vacuum of sound and space, JIN did not attempt to salvage his professional composure. He dropped his chin, his shoulders suddenly collapsing under the sheer weight of a long-suppressed longing, and right there in front of a live audience of 20,000 people and millions more watching live streams worldwide, Kim Seok-jin broke down completely. Tears spilled over his eyelashes, cutting clean tracks down his makeup-free cheeks as he covered his face with his free hand, his chest heaving with silent, raw sobs. Part TWO. The silence in the stadium was deafening, broken only by the muffled, unmistakable sound of a global superstar weeping openly on international television. For millions of armies watching through their screens at home, the emotional dam burst immediately. Social media platforms experienced an instant, historic surge as hashtags reflecting JIN's name and the unexpected family reunion trended worldwide within seconds. Viewers watching from their living rooms, dorm rooms, and late-night train commutes found themselves weeping alongside him, recognizing that what they were witnessing transcended the boundaries of ordinary celebrity culture. This was a raw, unscripted collision of filial love, cultural heritage, and the crushing isolation that often accompanies life at the very pinnacle of global fame. Slowly, fighting visibly against the tremors racking his frame, JIN lowered his hand and took a staggering step forward down the runway. He didn't care about the cameras zooming in from every conceivable angle to capture his reddened eyes and trembling lips. He didn't care about the strict scheduling of the show or the production crew frantically signaling adjustments from behind the wings. All he saw across the narrow expanse of space was his mother, the very woman who had packed him healthy lunchboxes with homemade kimchi during his school days, who had patiently endured his early anxieties about entering the entertainment industry, and who had quietly prayed for his safety through every grueling year of BTS's meteoric ascent. Seeing her standing there in Toronto was a profound reminder of the private sacrifices woven into the public triumph of BTS. When people spoke of the group's monumental success, their Grammy nominations, United Nations speeches, Billboard #1s, and sold-out stadium tours across continents, they rarely acknowledged the immense personal toll exacted upon the members and their families. Years of missed holidays, birthdays spent in recording studios, and the constant, suffocating anxiety of living under an unyielding microscope had kept these families apart for agonizing stretches of time. When JIN had enlisted in the military as the first member of BTS to fulfill his mandatory national duty, his mother had endured the same terrifying silence and anxious anticipation as the millions of fans waiting for his safe return. Now, united thousands of miles away from the quiet streets of Gwacheon where Seok-jin grew up, the distance of the past few years melted away in an instant. Throwing caution and protocol entirely to the wind, JIN broke into a full run down the stage ramp, abandoning his microphone on its stand as he sprinted toward the stairs leading down to the VIP section. The arena erupted into a tidal wave of shrieks and raw, unfiltered cheers as armies realized what was happening. Every single member of BTS was spiritually present in that moment through the invisible, unbreakable thread of their shared brotherhood. Fans watching instantly flooded chat rooms with messages noting how RM, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook would undoubtedly be watching this exact stream from their respective schedules, feeling every single tear right alongside their eldest brother. As JIN reached the barrier, he didn't wait for security to unlock the gate properly. He vaulted over the low partition with the desperate agility of a young boy seeking his mother's safety after a long, difficult day. He crossed the final few feet in a single bound and wrapped his arms completely around her, burying his face deep into the crook of her neck. The embrace was ferocious, desperate, and entirely devoid of the polished choreography that defined their professional lives. It was the primal, universal hug of a son who had spent years conquering the entire world, only to realize that his true home had always been encapsulated safely inside his mother's arms. His mother wrapped her arms tightly around his back, her hands pressing into his jacket as she closed her eyes, whispering words of comfort that the nearby microphones only partially captured. Gentle Korean. As the echoes of that unforgettable evening in Toronto faded into the crisp Canadian night air, the ripple effects of Kim Seok-jin's emotional breakdown reverberated far beyond the stadium walls, transforming a standard tour stop into a historic milestone for global pop culture. Industry insiders, music critics, and casual onlookers alike found themselves parsing through the sheer authenticity of what had transpired. In an industry frequently criticized for hyper-manufactured perfection and meticulously rehearsed public personas, JIN's unfiltered display of raw, maternal longing tore down the invisible barrier separating idol and audience. It was a stark reminder that beneath the multi-platinum albums, custom designer wardrobes, and astronomical streaming records lie human beings navigating the same universal vulnerabilities of love, separation, and family devotion. Backstage, once the cameras stopped rolling and the heavy arena doors sealed shut against the buzzing night, the atmosphere shifted into a sacred quiet. Surrounded by a tight-knit circle of trusted staff and security, the reunion continued away from the public gaze. Sources close to the production revealed that JIN's mother spent quiet, uninterrupted hours with him in his dressing room, sharing a simple meal and talking away the adrenaline of the performance. For a man who had spent the better part of a decade carrying the immense psychological pressure of being the eldest pillar of BTS, those private moments served as a vital restorative balm. It was the grounding force he needed before packing his bags to rejoin RM, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook for the next massive leg of their global journey. Across the globe, the rest of the BTS members were watching closely. Digital footprints and close acquaintances confirmed that the other 6 members, who had been juggling their own dense schedules, studio sessions, and promotional preparations, immediately reached out to their eldest Hyung. Group chat notifications buzzed incessantly as Suga offered his trademark dry, comforting humor. J-Hope sent enthusiastic voice notes filled with roaring cheers, and the younger members flooded their shared communication channels with expressions of deep solidarity. They understood better than anyone what Seok-jin was enduring. Having shared cramped practice rooms, sweaty rehearsal floors, and the agonizing uncertainty of their early years, the septet operated as a singular organism. When one bled, they all felt the sting, and when one wept in the arms of his mother, every single member felt the spiritual embrace across the miles. Social media metrics recorded an unprecedented spike, shattering previous engagement records as millions of global armies dissected every single second of the broadcast. The single white rose brought by JIN's mother became an overnight symbol of quiet sacrifice and unyielding support, inspiring fan art, poetry, and global charity projects initiated by dedicated fanbases in her honor. Marketing analysts noted that the incident generated a massive surge in algorithmic visibility, driving click-through rates and average watch times to historic highs as viewers replayed the clip frame by frame, searching for every micro-expression and hidden detail. Yet, beyond the cold calculations of SEO, CTR, and RPM, the true victory of the night belonged to pure human connection. As the tour prepared to press forward toward its next destination, the narrative surrounding BTS had fundamentally shifted. They were no longer just the unstoppable musical titans breaking every barrier known to modern entertainment. They were sons, brothers, and survivors who had weathered military conscription, public scrutiny, and the terrifying uncertainties of time. When JIN eventually steps back onto the stage for the next show, the atmosphere will be forever changed. The purple ocean of light sticks will wave not just for a global icon, but for a sun who reminded millions that no matter how far you travel, and no matter how high you climb among the stars, love, family, and home will always remain your true north. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the next stop of the world tour, the monumental impact of that unforgettable night in Toronto continued to shape the unfolding narrative of BTS. The industry was left reeling, but for the members and their millions of devoted fans, the moment served as a powerful catalyst. It was no longer just about chart-topping singles, sold-out stadiums, or record-breaking digital streams. It was about the raw, unfiltered humanity that breathed life into the phenomenon known worldwide as Bangtan Sonyeondan. In interviews following the incident, industry insiders noted a profound shift in how global media covered the group's individual endeavors. The vulnerability displayed by JIN opened a broader, much-needed conversation about the immense emotional resilience required of artists navigating the grueling transition from mandatory military service back to the blinding spotlight of international superstardom. Fans across every continent took to digital platforms to share their own personal stories of family separation, resilience, and reunion, creating a massive wave of global empathy that transcended language barriers and cultural divides. Behind the scenes, the preparations for the final leg of the tour took on an entirely new energy. Word leaked from production camps that the remaining shows would feature subtle yet poignant nods to family and brotherhood, the very pillars that sustained the septet through their toughest years. RM, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook were reported to be deep in collaborative sessions for their upcoming group reunion projects, fueled by a renewed sense of shared purpose and emotional clarity. The bond that began in a tiny, rundown practice room years ago had now been stress-tested by time, distance, military service, and global fame, emerging stronger and more indestructible than ever before. For the Army, this chapter marked a turning point of deep healing and triumphant anticipation. The single white rose from Toronto became an enduring emblem of quiet sacrifice, reminding every supporter that behind the billion-dollar brand and dazzling pyrotechnics, 7 young men from Seoul and the families who raised them had changed the world together. As the countdown to the full reunion of all 7 members ticked steadily closer, the global stage braced itself for a seismic return, proven once and for all that no matter how far they fly, their hearts remain anchored right where they started.